Before we start, just ask yourself one question. How good does a sniper have to be if he can hit a man from a moving boat at night with one shot at over 900 yards and do it again like it was nothing? Because there was one man in Vietnam who did exactly that, and yet almost no one knows his name. Today, you will. This is the forgotten American sniper, Adelbert Waldron. Watch to the end, because the last shot he ever took wasn't in a war. He wasn't born into a military family, no legacy, no medals waiting on a shelf. Adelbert F. Waldron II was born March 14, 1933, in Syracuse, New York. A quiet kid, not the type teachers remember, not the type neighbors expect to become one of the deadliest snipers in American history. He enlisted in the Navy first, not the Army, not infantry, not a warrior in training, just another young American serving because it seemed like the only steady path forward. But the sea wasn't his future. The jungles of Vietnam were. Before that, Waldron tried civilian life again, worked odd jobs, lived quietly. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. His story could have ended there, another name lost in a census record. Then Vietnam escalated, and Waldron enlisted again, this time in the U.S. Army. He joined the 9th Infantry Division, assigned to Mobile Riverine Forces, a unique and dangerous unit operating along the Mekong Delta. Unlike typical infantry or Marines, they fought on water, swift, unpredictable, silent ambushes and sudden firefights from reed-covered riverbanks. To survive there, a man needed more than strength. He needed patience, precision, discipline. And that was where Waldron changed. Something inside him switched from ordinary to lethal. But nobody knew it yet. To his superiors, Waldron was just another soldier. To his fellow troops, he was calm, polite, quiet. No ego, no dramatic speeches, no hint he would become something extraordinary. Yet the Mekong Delta was unforgiving. Ambushes came fast, death came faster. And the enemy didn't fear most Americans. But soon, they would fear one man. Because the first kill that revealed Waldron's talent wasn't luck. And after that shot, nothing about him would ever be ordinary again. Cliffhanger. The first time he pulled the trigger in Vietnam, he hit a target nobody else could even see. The Mekong night was thick, the kind that swallowed shapes, blurred distance, and made even trained soldiers doubt their own senses. The river was calm, almost unnaturally so, reflecting nothing but darkness. Jungle humidity sat heavy on the chest. Every sound seemed closer than it was. Waldron sat behind the mounted gun of the PBR patrol boat, scanning the shoreline. Most men on river duty stayed tense, fingers hovering over triggers, eyes flicking between shadow and movement. But Waldron? He looked relaxed, focused, but calm in a way that felt almost unnatural. A new soldier whispered, "How can you be calm out here?" Waldron didn't turn. Because panic doesn't change where the bullet will go. Minutes passed. Then a single spark. Not fire, not lightning. A flash of metal, binocular lens catching the faintest starlight. That was enough. A Viet Cong scout had lifted his head a fraction too high above the reeds to observe the river. Before anyone else processed the shape, Waldron raised his rifle, not the M21 yet, just a standard M14, and fired once. There was no hesitation, no adjustment, no second guess, just a clean, mechanical squeeze. The gunshot echoed. The patrol froze. Some thought he fired prematurely. Then the body fell sideways into the vegetation, silent, final. One round, perfect placement. The patrol leader muttered, "That's not normal." But there was no time to discuss it. Because the first shot wasn't the ambush, it was the warning. Seconds later, gunfire erupted from the riverbank. Tracers cut across the darkness. Bullets slammed into the metal hull and whipped past exposed skin. Shouts, movement, chaos. Most men ducked. Some returned fire blindly. Waldron didn't duck. He tracked. 3 shots rang out, spaced like a metronome. Not rushed, not frantic. Boom. A muzzle flash disappeared. Boom. Another firing position went silent. Boom. The last tracer source vanished mid-burst. In under 10 seconds, the ambush collapsed. Silence returned, not peaceful, but stunned. A crewman finally whispered, "What the hell are you?" Waldron lowered the rifle. Someone who doesn't like being shot at. No bragging, no bravado, just realism. Back at base, word spread, fast but quietly. Not through reports, but through the most accurate communication system in war. The voices of soldiers who lived because someone else was better at killing. Officers took notice. Instructors took notice. Even the enemy took notice. Because surviving Viet Cong fighters began spreading a rumor. There is an American who shoots like he already knows you're dead. And that rumor changed how the enemy behaved. They lowered their heads faster. They stopped peeking. They feared the river, not because of boats, but because of the silent man sitting on one of them. Waldron didn't know it yet, but the army had plans for him. And the next weapon they handed him wouldn't just change his war, it would change his legacy. When Waldron stepped off the patrol boat and walked onto the makeshift armory, he didn't expect anything unusual. Most riverine soldiers carried standard-issue weapons, nothing fancy, nothing custom. Vietnam was chaotic and equipment rotated fast. Rifles weren't personal, they were tools. But waiting on the wooden table was something different. A long rifle, matte black, with a fixed scope that looked almost oversized compared to the weapon beneath it. The armorer tapped the stock gently. "This one's yours now." Waldron ran a hand along the receiver. XM-21, prototype sniper system based on the M14, modified, tuned, precise. The scope? An RAT scope, automatic ranging telescope, a radical idea at the time. Instead of manually adjusting elevation based on range, the shooter adjusted the zoom until the target fit a known size bracket, and the scope automatically compensated. For most soldiers, it was overly complicated. For Waldron, it was perfect. He lifted the rifle, aiming casually through the doorway at a far-off tree line. The armorer waited for a reaction. Waldron only nodded. "She'll do." But the rifle alone didn't make him deadly. It unlocked what was already there. The test. Before assigning the weapon officially, command needed confirmation, not paperwork, proof. They took Waldron to a firing range deep in the jungle perimeter where distances stretched farther than most units ever trained. Targets were barely visible. Heat haze warped the air. Mosquitoes swarmed the moment a man stopped moving. A lieutenant smirked. "Rumor is you can hit anything." Waldron shrugged. "Rumors aren't bullets." The lieutenant pointed at a silhouette target nearly 900 yards away, barely a speck of shape against trees. One shot. Most snipers would request corrections, wind calls, or at least time to settle breathing. Waldron leaned into the rifle. Exhaled slowly. Pressed the trigger. The hit wasn't loud, but the echo of silence afterward was. The lieutenant blinked. Again. Another target. Farther. Same result. No misses. No hesitation. No emotional reaction. Not pride. Not excitement. Just precision. The lieutenant finally spoke, softer now. "How did you learn to shoot like that?" Waldron's answer was simple. By missing enough times before it mattered. The change. After that test, his role shifted. He wasn't just another soldier. He became a designated hunter. He traveled with elite river patrols, always at the edges, always scanning the world with a patience the jungle respected. There were moments when firefights would erupt, bullets cracking past helmets, men shouting, confusion spreading. And in the middle of it, Waldron would remain perfectly still, as if chaos only sharpened him. Troops began saying, if Waldron raises his rifle, someone is already dead. They just don't know when they'll fall. And they weren't wrong, because soon the patrols would encounter the target that would define Waldron's legend. Not an ambush, not a firefight, but a single man hiding where no one else would have spotted him. A man who believed distance and darkness would protect him. He was wrong, and that mistake would lead to the most unbelievable shot of Waldron's career. The Mekong River at night was a different world. Black water, black sky, black jungle swallowing both. Engines on patrol boats were throttled low, barely above a murmur. Men spoke in whispers, if at all. The air smelled like mud, diesel, and something older, something that had been waiting long before war arrived. Waldron sat near the bow, rifle cradled across his chest, eyes scanning the shoreline through the faint glow of starlight and jungle haze. Most soldiers hated night patrols. Waldron preferred them. The darkness slowed everything, even fear. Suddenly, one of the forward gunners stiffened. Movement, right bank. The patrol boat didn't stop, but it stalled just enough to become a target. The jungle along the bank remained still. Nothing obvious, no muzzle flash, no silhouette. Just silence. Then, crack! A single round slammed into the boat's steel plating inches from the gunner's shoulder. Sparks flashed, someone cussed. Another shot followed, closer. The VC sniper hidden in the tree line somehow saw them through the dark. The men ducked, someone yelled, "Where is he? I don't see—" Waldron didn't answer. He was already moving. Slow, calm, precise. He set the bipod legs against the boat's railing, adjusted the ART scope. Not rushed, methodical. Another enemy shot ripped the air, closer than before. The sniper had their distance dialed in. Waldron exhaled. Through the scope, he scanned along tree branches, shadows, and small breaks in the brush. Most eyes would search for a silhouette. He searched for something else. Disruption. A leaf bent the wrong way. A glint of condensation on metal. A shape too symmetrical to be nature. There, barely visible, a fragment of geometry where everything else was chaos. A small patch of shadow shifted. That was enough. Waldron didn't speak, didn't warn anyone, didn't request distance. He gently squeezed the trigger. Boom. Silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then, in the tree line, a body fell. Not forward, not to the side, straight down, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The patrol crew stared. One of them whispered, no way you saw that." Another finally asked what everyone was thinking. How far? The navigator checked his plotted marks, traced the map, and froze. 1,380 yards. No one said anything after that. Men just looked at Waldron differently. Not like a good shot, like something else. A weapon the jungle itself had forged. The aftermath. When they returned to base, word spread before Waldron even stepped off the boat. At the mess tent, men stopped eating and stared. Someone muttered, "He hit a man at nearly 1,400 yards, at night." Someone else corrected him. "He didn't hit him, he erased him." The officers asked him to confirm. Waldron simply shrugged. Lucky guess. Nobody believed that. From that night on, the river patrols felt different. Men stood taller when Waldron was aboard. Fear didn't disappear, But it became manageable, because if there was a sniper hunting them, Waldron hunted first. One patrol member summed it up perfectly months later. Out there were two kinds of nights, the ones Waldron rode with us, and the ones we prayed he would. But the war was just beginning to test him. His skill wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a threat the enemy couldn't ignore. Soon they would send their best after him. And that would lead to a deadly duel deep in the jungle fog. A duel between two unseen hunters. Only one would walk away. 2 nights after the river kill, the war changed tone. Radio chatter from intelligence began mentioning a new phrase: counter-sniper activity. At first, the men thought nothing of it. Vietnam was full of traps, ambushes, mines, unseen shooters. But this time, it was different. Someone, somewhere, had noticed Waldron. And now, the jungle whispered back. First sign, the warning shot. The patrol boat was moving through a narrow mangrove channel, branches hanging so low they slapped helmets and scraped paint. Halfway through the bend, a single rifle round cracked the air and hit the water 3 feet in front of the bow. Not at the boat, not close to a man. A deliberate warning. A message. I know where you are. The crew froze. One sailor whispered, "Charlie doesn't warn." But someone out there had, on purpose. The patrol commander radioed base. Possible trained counter-sniper. Request guidance. HQ answered, "If it's real, Waldron will confirm." Every man on the boat turned to look at him. Waldron didn't blink. Slow to half speed, he said, "Stay quiet." The engine tone softened. The jungle inhaled. Waldron raised his rifle and scanned the tree line. Not frantically, rhythmically, like a metronome. He waited. 1 minute. 2. 4. The men's breathing sounded louder than the engine. Then, very faint, something changed. A mangrove leaf shifted in a direction wind wouldn't move it. That was enough. Waldron fired. 1 shot. A second later, a splash. Not a leaf, not a bird. A body falling out of a tree. The crew stared. The commander finally spoke. That wasn't random. Waldron answered quietly, "Someone's testing us." That shooter wasn't alone. The second sign, the calling card. The next evening, patrols found something floating in the river. A spent 7.62 cartridge casing tied to a strip of red cloth. Not trash, not random. A soldier's warning, a signature. Someone wanted a duel. The third sign, silence. Normally, the river was alive. Insects, frogs, distant engines, even gunfire miles away. But on the night after the casing was found, everything was silent. No birds, no animals. Even the jungle seemed to be holding its breath. A sailor whispered, "Feels like someone turned the world off." Waldron nodded slowly. He's here. The counter-sniper. They never learned his name, only fragments. Rumor said he had trained with the French in the First Indochina War. Some said he had been a hunter before the revolution, someone who could wait 14 hours for a single clean shot. Others said he didn't fight for ideology or rank, but for something older: pride, skill, recognition. A duel with someone who deserved it. And in that river jungle, he had found a challenge. He wanted Waldron, not to ambush him, not to harass him, to defeat him. The standoff. The two snipers faced each other without faces, just instincts, shadows, and patience. Hours passed. The patrol didn't move. No one talked. It was no longer a mission. It was a contest. 2 men with rifles, separated by jungle, waiting for the other to be the first to blink. A sailor gripping his M16 finally whispered what every man was thinking. Whoever shoots first loses, because movement meant exposure. Exposure meant death. Time stretched. Sweat ran. The jungle stayed silent. Finally, Waldron breathed in, very slowly. He had seen it. Not a silhouette, not a muzzle, just the slightest shimmer, light reflecting off moisture on a scope deep in the brush. Waldron aligned his sights just above the reflection, and then he waited. 2 full minutes. Then, gently, delicately, click, click. He rotated the elevation knob 2 clicks right. Aim not at where the enemy was, but where the enemy would flinch once he realized he'd been spotted. And when Waldron finally fired, the jungle answered with one short final sound, a quiet thud, the sound of a body collapsing without breath left to scream. The duel was over, but his war, not even close. After the counter-sniper duel, things changed. Not officially. There were no medals, no announcements, no briefings recorded in war diaries. But among the river patrol crews, a shift happened. Before, Waldron was respected. Now, he was believed. The jokes stopped. The doubts evaporated. Men watched him load his rifle like priests watching a ritual. And the senior officers noticed too. They didn't assign Waldron to patrols randomly anymore. They deployed him like a precision weapon. Some missions were reconnaissance. Some were overwatch. Some were silent hunts with no recorded objective except find the shooter. But the shot that made him a legend, even among hardened Vietnam vets, came on a humid, miserable morning along the Mekong tributaries. The ambush. A convoy of 3 patrol boats was moving along a narrow stretch of river flanked by tall elephant grass, perfect for an ambush. Waldron stood near the forward rail, scanning the terrain. The morning haze blurred the distance. Heat shimmered above the water. The world felt soft and unfocused. A terrible place to see anything. A perfect place to hide everything. The lieutenant beside him whispered, "Feels wrong." Waldron nodded. Too quiet. Then the trap snapped. From the grass, a sudden eruption. Machine gun fire, rockets, yelling in Vietnamese. The lead boat took a hit near the bow. Not a direct explosion, but enough to shred metal and knock men off their feet. The engine revved wildly as the driver fought for control. Men dropped to the deck, returning fire blindly into vegetation. Someone shouted, "Where are they shooting from?" But Waldron wasn't ducking. He was already moving. Slow, deliberate steps. Rifle up, breathing steady. The target. There, halfway up a tree-lined ridge, barely visible through smoke and foliage, was movement. Not a muzzle flash, not a silhouette, just a faint glint. Sun on metal. A scope. A sniper, positioned above the firefight, directing it. A commander. Eliminate him, and the ambush loses its eyes. The lieutenant saw what Waldron was aiming at and hissed, "That's too far, too much distortion, you can't." But Waldron wasn't listening. He was calculating. Wind? Barely there. Humidity? High. Bullet drop increased. Range? He judged distance by instinct, the same way trackers judged footprints. But instinct wasn't enough. So Waldron did something the men still talk about. He fired not at the target, but at the dirt near the shoreline. Boom. The men flinched, but Waldron watched the splash pattern. He made 3 adjustments to his scope: elevation, windage, breathing alignment. The crew stared. Someone whispered, "He's walking the round in. He's zeroing on the fly." The lieutenant said nothing. He was too busy watching a man becoming something more than a marksman. The legendary shot. Waldron exhaled. Long, controlled. His heartbeat slowed. The rifle became weightless. The jungle faded. There was only the target, and the fraction of a second where everything aligned. Waldron squeezed the trigger. Boom. A long silence followed. No one breathed. Then, almost impossibly far away, the sniper fell out of the tree. No stagger, no scream, just gravity pulling down lifeless weight. The ridge went silent. Within seconds, the entire ambush collapsed. Enemy fire slowed, then stopped. The patrol commander muttered, barely audible. One shot ended the whole attack. The radio operator finally called it in. Sniper eliminated. Enemy retreating. Minimal casualties. The lieutenant looked at Waldron, really looked at him, and asked, "How far was that?" Waldron didn't brag, didn't smile. He just answered, "About 900. The lieutenant shook his head. "No," he whispered, "that was further." Later range estimation confirmed it. 926 yards. Against a hidden target, in combat conditions, with environmental distortion, under ambush fire. A shot that, by every technical metric, should have been missed. But Waldron didn't follow metrics. He followed instinct, patience, and a level of calm no battlefield could shake. From that day forward, patrol crews started calling him something. Not a sniper, not a shooter, but the one who can see in war. And the enemy? They started hunting him differently, because now they knew exactly who he was. Word travels fast in war. Faster than bullets, faster than helicopters, faster than orders. It didn't matter that the kill wasn't written in a report or said in a briefing. Somehow, the enemy knew. Within days, patrol intercepts and field intel confirmed it. The Viet Cong had put a bounty on Waldron. Not just a reward, a symbolic challenge. Rumors said the price was 20,000 dong, a fortune for a rural fighter. Others claimed it wasn't about money at all. It was about honor. Someone among the enemy commanders had declared, "If the Americans have a ghost, we will find a hunter." From then on, the jungle behaved differently. Not chaotic, but calculating. The false trail. On a late afternoon patrol, the riverbanks looked unusually empty. Too empty. No fishermen, no children, no villagers moving between huts. Just stillness. The patrol commander frowned. "Feels like a setup." Waldron nodded. He noticed subtle signs. Footprints running parallel to the waterline, not toward it. Grass flattened in unnatural patterns. Clay residue on bamboo poles that hadn't been there earlier. A staged landscape. A battlefield prepared. A shout from the second boat broke the silence. "Tripwires! Stop the engines!" Mud disguised fragmentation grenades. Thin fishing line ran tree to tree. Metal shards glinted where the sun hit. A kill zone designed with one purpose: to force the Americans to disembark into firing lanes controlled by snipers. The commander whispered, "They're waiting for you." Waldron replied quietly, "No, they're waiting for someone who thinks like me." Then he smiled, a small, tired smile. They're about to be disappointed. The countermove. Instead of landing, Waldron ordered the boats to drift back and hold position beyond rifle accuracy. The crew expected him to start scanning the shoreline, but he didn't. He looked at the opposite bank. 30 seconds passed. Then, a single glint. Sunlight bouncing off something polished. Scope glass. Someone hidden where no ambush diagram recommended. Someone who anticipated a counter-sniper's thought process. Someone who was not just executing orders, but reading the battlefield the same Waldron did. A whisper escaped one of the patrolmen. They sent their best. The silent stare down. Waldron didn't shoot. Not yet. He stared through the stope, and somehow he knew. That sniper wasn't just waiting. He was watching him. Two predators, two rifles, two minds calculating probability, wind drift, breathing rhythm, the difference between instinct and impulse. Time stretched thin. No shots, just patience as a weapon. One patrolman finally whispered, "Whoever breaks first is dead." And he was right. Both shooters were waiting for just one mistake. A shift of the barrel, a tilt of the head, a breath taken too fast, a tell. It became a duel without movement, a chess match where every second was a piece fallen. The decision. Finally, as the sun began to drop, Waldron saw something. Not on the sniper, on the branch above him. A bird. Small, twitchy, unaware of the war unfolding beneath it. And that's when Waldron understood. The sniper wasn't just using camouflage. He was using nature. The rustle of the bird masked his micro-movements. The animal activity disguised human presence. It was brilliant. It was rare. And it made him predictable. Because birds react to rhythm, and rhythm exposes timing. Waldron waited until the sniper's breathing aligned with his focus on the bird. And when the branch dipped just slightly as the shooter inhaled, Waldron fired. One round. No correction, no follow-up. The duel ended before most men on board even processed that a shot had been fired. A long moment passed before the patrol commander dared to ask, "Did you get him?" Waldron didn't answer. He just lowered the rifle and said, "Move, before dark." The aftermath. When the boats finally passed the ambush site, men saw the confirmation. A rifle lying beside a still body. A black bandana wrapped around the head. Not standard uniform, not conscript issue. A mark of an elite shooter. One of the Viet Cong's shadow units. Someone trained to hunt the hunters. Someone who almost changed the story. One sailor murmured, "They sent a sniper to kill a sniper." The lieutenant replied, "No, they sent their best." And it still wasn't enough. Waldron remained silent, because deep down he knew. If the enemy had sent one this skilled, they would send another, and the next one would be even better. After the failed sniper duel, the river patrols felt unsettled, not relieved. Victories in the jungle were never final. Nothing stayed quiet for long. For the next 2 weeks, there were no ambushes, no warning shots, no traps laid across the river. Just unnatural calm. Some men believed the enemy was regrouping. Others believed they were waiting for the perfect shot. Waldron believed something else. They're watching us. Not attacking, not testing, studying. Understanding patterns, routes, timings, terrain habits, learning the way hunters learn the pathways of prey. The Mekong felt alive in a way no one liked. Not noisy, sentient. A strange signal. One night, during a moonless patrol, the forward observation deck radioed the bridge. Red flare, 1 kilometer ahead. A flare meant trouble, usually distress, sometimes bait. But the flare wasn't rising. It was stationary, burning from the ground. A marker, a beacon, a message. The boat slowed to a crawl. The lieutenant turned to Waldron. "Enemy calling card?" Waldron shook his head. "No, this is coordination." The flare wasn't meant for Americans. It was meant for other VC units in the area. Something big was happening. The echoes. Then came the sound. Small at first. A rustle here, a twig snapping there. Footsteps, light, spaced, disciplined. Then another, and another, until the entire jungle seemed to whisper movement. The patrol gunner swallowed hard. There's dozens of them." "No," Waldron corrected quietly. "Hundreds." But they weren't charging. They weren't firing. They were encircling. The river narrowed ahead, forcing the boats between two steep, densely vegetated embankments. A perfect kill corridor. The lieutenant whispered, "We need to reverse, now." But before the order could be given, a single whistle echoed through the trees. Short, sharp, final. Then, white muzzle flashes erupted from both sides of the river. Machine guns, bolt-action rifles, automatic fire. Tracer rounds slashed through the darkness in red streaks. The river exploded into chaos. Men hit the deck. Sparks flew from metal. Someone shouted orders, but the gunfire drowned everything. The impossible situation. 3 things were clear in the first 5 seconds. They were surrounded. The shorelines were too steep to escape. Someone was coordinating the attack with discipline and precision. This wasn't random jungle fighting. This was a planned extermination. A voice from the rear boat shouted, "We need to fall back." The lieutenant grabbed Waldron by the shoulder. "We can't break through without suppressing fire. We don't even know where their command is." Waldron lifted his rifle. Not fast, not frantic. Methodical. Scanning among muzzle flashes and shifting silhouettes. He spoke calmly, even as bullets punched sparks across the rail inches from his face. "Someone's directing this. Someone with a radio or signal relay. Find him, and the line collapses." The lieutenant hissed, "You can't see anything in this." Waldron fired. 1 shot, then a second, a third. Not rapid, measured. Each followed by a faint cry or sudden silence from the tree line. Behind him, the chaos slowed, not because the gunfire stopped, but because the crew started watching him. They saw something terrifying. Waldron wasn't reacting. He was predicting. Every time a muzzle flashed twice in the same place, he fired. Every time a shooter repositioned in a pattern, he anticipated the next window and shot before they appeared. A sailor whispered, "He's not using the rifle." Another answered, voice shaking, "The rifle's using him." The break point. Then Waldron saw it. Not a muzzle flash, not a silhouette. A flag signal. Small, almost invisible in the darkness, light reflecting off a black and red pennant among the brush. A command node. The beating heart of the coordinated fire. Waldron adjusted. Breath steady, hands calm, timing perfect. He fired. Boom. The flag dropped. 5 seconds later, enemy fire faltered. Not all at once, but like a system losing connection. Scattered, disorganized, confused. The coordinated ambush became individual panic. The jungle, once a synchronized weapon, fractured into chaos. The patrol gunner swallowed hard. There's dozens of them." "No," Waldron corrected quietly. "Hundreds." But they weren't charging. They weren't firing. They were encircling. The river narrowed ahead, forcing the boats between 2 steep, densely vegetated embankments. A perfect kill corridor. The lieutenant whispered, "We need to reverse, now." But before the order could be given, a single whistle echoed through the trees. Short, sharp, final. Then, white muzzle flashes erupted from both sides of the river. Machine guns, bolt-action rifles, automatic fire. Tracer rounds slashed through the darkness in red streaks. The river exploded into chaos. Men hit the deck. Sparks flew from metal. Someone shouted orders, but the gunfire drowned everything. The impossible situation. 3 things were clear in the first 5 seconds. They were surrounded. The shorelines were too steep to escape. Someone was coordinating the attack with discipline and precision. This wasn't random jungle fighting. This was a planned extermination. A voice from the rear boat shouted, "We need to fall back." The lieutenant grabbed Waldron by the shoulder. "We can't break through without suppressing fire. We don't even know where their command is." Waldron lifted his rifle. Not fast, not frantic. Methodical. Scanning among muzzle flashes and shifting silhouettes. He spoke calmly, even as bullets punch sparks across the rail inches from his face. Someone's directing this. Someone with a radio or signal relay. Find him, and the line collapses. The lieutenant hissed, "You can't see anything in this." Waldron fired. One shot, then a second, a third. Not rapid, measured. Each followed by a faint cry or sudden silence from the tree line. Behind him, the chaos slowed, not because the gunfire stopped, but because the crew started watching him. They saw something terrifying. Waldron wasn't reacting. He was predicting. Every time a muzzle flashed twice in the same place, he fired. Every time a shooter repositioned in a pattern, he anticipated the next window and shot before they appeared. A sailor whispered, "He's not using the rifle." Another answered, voice shaking, "The rifle's using him." The break point. Then Waldron saw it. Not a muzzle flash, not a silhouette, a flag signal. Small, almost invisible in the darkness, light reflecting off a black and red pennant among the brush. A command node, the beating heart of the coordinated fire. Waldron adjusted, breath steady, hands calm, timing perfect. He fired. Boom. The flag dropped. 5 seconds later, enemy fire faltered. Not all at once, but like a system losing connection. Scattered, disorganized, confused. The coordinated ambush became individual panic. The jungle, once a synchronized weapon, fractured into chaos. The lieutenant shouted, "Full engines, push through." The boat slammed forward, gunners now returning fire confidently. The VC, deprived of command structure, broke and fled. 5 minutes later, silence reclaimed the river. Only the churn of water behind the boats remained. Aftermath. The men stared at Waldron in disbelief. One whispered, "How many did you hit?" Waldron wiped his scope with a cloth. "Enough." The lieutenant shook his head slowly. "No," he said quietly. "You saved everyone on these boats, and you did it in the dark." Waldron didn't celebrate, didn't brag. He simply muttered, "They won't stop, not after tonight." And he was right, because the enemy had one last move, and it would be the deadliest yet. 3 days after the night ambush, the Mekong went eerily calm again. No sniper fire, no traps, no scouts watching from the reeds, just still water and silence thick enough to make the air feel heavier. The patrol crews didn't relax, not anymore. Silence wasn't safety. Silence was preparation. Waldron stood near the bow as usual, eyes forward, rifle resting across his lap like an extension of his heartbeat. The lieutenant stepped beside him. "You think they're regrouping?" Waldron didn't answer right away. He watched a cluster of birds lifting from distant treetops, not startled, but disturbed, like they were moving because something beneath them had changed. Finally, he exhaled and said quietly, "They're not regrouping." The lieutenant frowned. "Then what are they doing?" Waldron kept his eyes on the distant tree line, waiting. The radio call. At 14:22, a crackled transmission hit the patrol frequency. A helicopter crew, flying low reconnaissance, reported taking heavy sniper fire near a village band upriver. Shots weren't random, they were precise. Strong crosswind, long distance, moving target. And yet someone hit the helicopter's tail boom, on purpose. A warning shot, not a missed kill. The pilot's voice trembled when he repeated, "Sniper is highly trained. He could have taken us down. He didn't." That wasn't malice, that was invitation, challenge, a message meant for exactly one man. The crew didn't need clarification. Everyone looked at Waldron. He didn't argue, he didn't hesitate, he just said, "Take us there." The village band. The river curved sharply, forming a natural amphitheater of high marsh grass and sloped jungle ridges. A sniper's paradise, and a death trap for anyone floating through. The lieutenant whispered, "He wants you to step into his line." Waldron nodded. But wanting and controlling aren't the same thing. The boat slowed, engines barely humming. Crew stayed low, scanning both sides. But Waldron didn't look at the ridges where most eyes would go. He looked at the open field beyond the village. Flat land, no cover. Wind touching tall grass in steady, rhythmic waves. The kind of terrain where only someone truly confident would take a shot. Someone who believed distance was an ally, not a limitation. The first shot. Then it happened. A single rifle crack, not frantic, not hurried, precision. A patrolman shouted as his helmet jerked sideways, grazed. Close, too close. The lieutenant cursed. He's zeroing. No, Waldron corrected. He already has zero. That meant one thing. The sniper had been watching the patrol long before the first shot. The standoff. The boats halted, positioning against natural bends and logs for partial cover. Men kept low. Waldron raised his rifle. He didn't rush. He didn't breathe hard. The world narrowed through the scope. Grass bending, heat waves rising, wind shifting direction. Nothing obvious. No muzzle flash, no silhouette, no movement. Just emptiness. And then, a faint flicker. Not in the grass, but in the air above it. Distortion. The optical mirage created by a heated barrel after a sniper shot. A sign only someone trained would notice. Waldron whispered to himself, "There you are." He dialed elevation, adjusted wind, rested the rifle, and waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. The sniper wasn't firing again. He was waiting for Waldron to expose himself. But Waldron had no intention of doing that. Instead, he aimed not at the mirage, but at where the shooter's heartbeat would place his head if he leaned forward to observe. The shot was impossible. A faint shimmer, extreme distance, wind drift, no mathematical certainty. Only instinct, only experience, only war. Waldron exhaled and fired. The result. There was no scream, no visible fall, just stillness. The wind continued to move the grass, but one patch no longer swayed. It slumped, collapsed. The lieutenant swallowed hard. How far was that? Waldron spoke softly. Over 1,000. Then he added something no one expected. And he was good. The realization. As the boats advanced cautiously past the village, they found him. A Viet Cong sniper, young, no older than 20, lying beside a meticulously camouflaged rifle position. But what stunned them wasn't the rifle. It was what lay next to it. A small U.S. Army field manual on sniping. Pages bookmarked, sections underlined, diagrams annotated. This sniper hadn't just been trained. He'd been studying Waldron's world, learning American doctrine, turning it against him. A sailor stared in disbelief. Why would he use our manuals? Waldron answered quietly, "Because war isn't about weapons, it's about minds." The lieutenant exhaled. "So you think that was the last one?" Waldron closed his rifle case. No. He looked at the river ahead, dark, unknowable, alive. The jungle felt heavier again, because for every sniper who fell, another learned, and somewhere ahead, the one who trained them was waiting. The patrol continued upriver with tension thick enough to taste. No one spoke, no one joked. Every splash against the boat hull sounded like a warning. Waldron said quietly, hands resting on the rifle case but not gripping it. He didn't need to hold it yet. He needed to think. The young sniper they'd just encountered wasn't random. He was patient, disciplined, educated. Snipers like that aren't produced overnight. They are built. The lieutenant finally broke the silence. "You think that kid was part of a sniper team?" Waldron shook his head. "No team, no spotter. His discipline was solo." "So what do you think he was?" Waldron stared ahead, voice low. "A student." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. "Meaning?" Waldron looked up, meaning the teacher is still out there. Signs of an invisible war. Hours passed. Villages came and went, silent, abandoned, or pretending to be. But the signs were there. Spent brass casings buried near reeds. Fresh boot prints where no friendly forces operated. Broken vegetation from prone firing positions. Not sloppy, not rushed, measured. Someone was studying U.S. patrol patterns, learning firing angles, terrain advantage, wind behavior along the river. Sniping wasn't secondary here. Sniping was the strategy. A sailor muttered, "Feels like somebody's following us." Waldron corrected him gently. "No, he's not following." He looked at the tree line. "He's guiding." The second message. Near twilight, just as the river narrowed between steep jungle walls, a single bullet snapped overhead, not aimed to kill, but to warn. Every soldier ducked. Waldron didn't. He raised binoculars slowly, scanning the ridge. Nothing visible. But the placement of that shot meant everything. Not rushed, not reckless, not panicked. It was a sniper saying, "I see you. I control the space. Your move." The lieutenant hissed, "Do we return fire?" Waldron lowered the binoculars. "No." "Why not?" Waldron's answer was cold and precise. Because he didn't miss, he measured. The night without sleep. The boats anchored behind natural cover. Guards rotated in silence. No one took off their gear. Waldron sat awake against the hull, staring at the moonlit tree line. The lieutenant approached. "You're not sleeping?" Waldron shook his head. "Snipers don't attack at dawn. They attack at predictability." "What does that mean?" Waldron looked at him with eyes that had seen more war than conversation. "We're not in a firefight. We're in a duel." The lieutenant exhaled slowly. "So how do we win?" Waldron finally opened his rifle case. Not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate. By lamplight he checked his scope, adjusted turrets, swapped rounds, cleaned the chamber. Then he whispered, "We stopped playing his game." The plan. At first light, instead of moving upriver as expected, Waldron ordered the boats to reverse direction, slow, controlled, noiseless against the current. But the signs were there. The lieutenant frowned. "You're retreating?" Waldron shook his head. "No, but we're going backwards." Waldron tapped the map, specifically the narrow bend they had passed earlier. "We're circling." "Why?" Waldron pointed at the terrain. "That ridge has only one viable firing arc. If I return there, he'll think I'm repeating a mistake." And Waldron locked the boat forward with finality. Snipers don't resist predictable targets. The wait. They returned to the bend and stopped, engines off, no voices, just wind through reeds. A full minute passed, then 2, then 5. The lieutenant whispered, "What if he's not there?" Waldron didn't blink. "He is." Another 30 seconds, then a faint glint. Not metal, not movement, just a reflection off something polished, something angled. The telltale shimmer of a glass lens. That was all Waldron needed. He fired. One single round. No follow-up, no adjustments, just trust. The result. Silence. Then a distant thump. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just the sound of a body hitting earth. The lieutenant swallowed. "You think you got him?" Waldron packed his rifle. "No." The lieutenant blinked. "No? Then who?" Waldron cut him off. That was his spotter. The patrol froze. "You mean," Waldron nodded, "the real sniper hasn't fired yet." For a long moment, nobody spoke. The lieutenant's face drained of color. "A spotter?" he whispered. Waldron nodded slowly. "Only a trained sniper uses a forward spotter with a mirrored signal lens." "You mean he let us see that reflection?" Waldron closed his rifle case and stood. He wanted to see who would shoot first. The realization hit the patrol like a cold wave. This wasn't random combat. This was a duel between hunters, one American, one unseen adversary. The silence before the storm. The river sat painfully still. No wind, no birds, no splashing fish. Just a silence so complete it felt unnatural. Waldron motioned to the lieutenant. No torches, no flashes, shut the radios. All engines stay cold. The soldiers complied without hesitation now. Even the greenest private understood. Something was stalking them. Something patient, something skilled. The taunt. 5 minutes later, a rifle crack split the quiet. Not rapid, not frantic, a single controlled shot. It struck the metal hull beside one of the deck gunners, so close the impact burned his cheek with flying paint. The message was unmistakable. I can kill you, but I choose not to, yet. Soldiers ducked below cover, hands shaking. One hissed, "He's toying with us." Waldron didn't look afraid. He looked focused. "No," he said softly, "he's studying us." The pattern. Waldron scanned the tree line, not searching randomly, but following logic. A trained sniper never fires from the same place twice, never fires without an escape route, never fires from the obvious high point, but from the blind approach to the high point. After a moment, Waldron murmured, "He's moving left." "How do you know?" the lieutenant asked. Waldron tapped the boat rail twice. "Because if I were him, I'd do the same." The bait. Waldron motioned for a helmet. One soldier hesitated, then handed his over. Waldron tied a rope to the chin strap and held the line low. Then slowly, agonizingly slowly, he raised the helmet over the boat edge until just the rounded silhouette was visible. Everyone held their breath. 10 seconds, 20, then, crack. The helmet spun violently as a bullet tore straight through it. Perfect shot, perfect angle, no hesitation, no correction. The sniper had fired like a man taking a shot he knew he'd already made. Waldron pulled the helmet down and murmured, "He's confident." Then, after a beat, "He's close." The counter move. Waldron lifted his rifle, not fast, not dramatic, just deliberate. "Stay down," he whispered. The lieutenant swallowed. "You see him?" "Almost." "What do you mean, almost?" Waldron answered without blinking. "I can see the shot, but not the shooter." That meant the sniper was firing from a concealed angled depression, not behind a tree, not behind brush, but through it. A trick only masters used. Waldron scanned for inconsistencies. Backlit shape, disturbed grass, bullet travel vectors, muzzle carbon on leaves. Then he froze. Just one leaf, one, was burned slightly at the edge, barely visible, invisible to anyone but him. He inhaled and exhaled once. "I have him." The shot. The soldiers waited. Seconds stretched. Somewhere in the jungle, the enemy sniper was also waiting, expecting panic, retreat, or rushing movement. But Waldron did none. He adjusted 2 clicks for elevation, 1 for crosswind, finger steady, breathing slow. The world shrank until only 2 beings existed, the hunter and the other hunter. Then Waldron whispered, "For the kid you trained," and fired. The aftermath. No return shot, no movement, no warning, just stillness. Finally, after nearly a full minute, Waldron stood, not recklessly, but confidently. "He's done." The lieutenant exhaled shakily. "You're sure?" Waldron nodded once. It was a center-line shot. "Heart?" Waldron shook his head. "Eye socket." The walk to confirmation.
Against every instinct in their bodies, the patrol moved ashore. Waldron led. The jungle swallowed them, humid and close. 40 yards in, they found him. A sniper in a woven camouflage suit, hands still resting on his boat handle. Eyes open, expression calm, as if accepting defeat with respect. Beside him lay the body of the young sniper from yesterday. A student and a teacher, both gone. The lieutenant whispered, "Who trains snipers like this?" Waldron answered quietly, "Someone who expects to fight us for a long time."
They wrapped the sniper bodies respectfully, not out of sympathy, but out of an unspoken rule among marksmen. If you survive a duel, you honor the one who almost ended you. No one joked, no one bragged. The river patrol moved again, slower this time, not because of danger, but because every man on board was processing what had happened. The lieutenant finally broke the quiet. "You ever think about how many shots like that you've taken?" Waldron didn't look away from the passing tree line. "No," he said, "counting makes it personal." "But it is personal," the lieutenant muttered. Waldron finally turned, eyes focused, not angry, just tired. "If I carry every face, I stop seeing the next one clearly." The rumor spreads. Word of the duel spread through the Mekong like wildfire. Boat crews repeated it. Scouts whispered it. Helicopter pilots claimed they heard it through intel channels. By the time the story reached battalion headquarters, it had already changed form. Waldron tracked a sniper across 5 miles. Waldron shot a man hiding behind a termite mound. Waldron hit a target over a mile away. The lieutenant smirked when he heard that one. Funny how stories grow. Waldron didn't smile. He simply replied, "Stories grow because fear grows slower than truth." The commander calls. 2 days later, Waldron was ordered to a forward command tent. Inside waited a United States Army colonel, clean uniform, polished boots, maps spread across a folding table. He didn't shake Waldron's hand. He studied him first. "You're Waldron." Waldron nodded. "Yes, sir." The colonel tapped the map. "You've changed the situation along these river sectors. Enemy sniper activity has dropped more than 70% in 48 hours. He paused. "That doesn't happen by accident." Waldron stood silently. He wasn't there for praise. Finally, the colonel leaned forward. "We want you off boats. Permanently." The lieutenant beside him stiffened. "Sir?" The colonel continued. "You'll lead a counter-sniper school. Teach what you know. Build more Waldron-level shooters. We need dozens, not one." Waldron's jaw tightened. He looked at his rifle hands, the calluses, the burns, the bruises. Teaching meant stepping away from the fight, away from the silence, the danger, the precision, away from the river. But he also knew something else. Every sniper war eventually becomes a knowledge war. And the enemy had shown, loudly, that they were learning. Waldron spoke quietly. "Will this school be temporary?" "No," the colonel answered. "Doctrinal." That word mattered. Not a stopgap. A permanent change to how U.S. forces operated. Waldron finally nodded. "Then I'll do it. The last patrol." Before leaving the unit, Waldron requested one thing, one more run. The lieutenant stared at him. "Why?" Waldron gave him a small, tired smile. "You don't walk away from a battlefield like flipping a switch." So they went. One last twilight patrol. No snipers fired, no traps snapped, no shadows shifted with intent. Just a quiet river and the hum of a boat engine cutting through hostile stillness. For the first time in weeks, the Mekong felt almost peaceful. The lieutenant looked over. "So what now?" Waldron watched the fading tree line, his battlefield, his classroom, his silent crucible. "Now," he said softly, "I make sure the next generation isn't surprised." The legacy. A month later, Waldron stood on a shooting range. Not jungle mud, not river water, just sand, wind, and line silhouettes. Young soldiers watched him like students before a philosopher. Some expected speeches,
Some expected swagger. Instead, Waldron began with 6 simple words, the same he lived by on the Mekong. See before you shoot. Think before you move. One recruit raised a hand. "Sergeant Waldron, how many confirmed kills did you really have?" Waldron looked at him, not angry, but solemn. After a long pause, he said, "Enough to know there shouldn't be bragging rights." The truth that never made the headlines. Waldron ended the war with 109 confirmed kills from a moving platform, a record that still stands untouched. But he never chased medals, never chased recognition, never asked for a statue or a book. Because to him, sniping was never about glory. It was about protecting his unit, ending ambushes before they began, seeing threats others couldn't, and walking away without needing applause. His commanding officer once summed him up perfectly. Waldron didn't fight for fame. He fought so others could go home. The final note. Years later, after the war, someone asked him whether he missed the river patrols. Waldron thought for a long moment before answering. "No, but sometimes the river still follows me." And that was enough said.